It's the middle of winter in Canada as I'm writing this, and there are some days where I feel like the weather couldn't possibly get any worse. Then, I think of all the crazy stuff happening on Mars, and I say thank you to Mother Earth for being so chill. Let's not waste any time. Here are 6 unhinged meteorological facts about the red planet. Boom! These are called CO2 Sublimation Jets, and they happen during the Martian spring. If you look here, you'll see that Mars, just like Earth, has a North Pole and a South Pole, which are always covered in a thick layer of ice. Now there might be water ice deep underneath, but the top layer is actually made of frozen carbon dioxide. You know, dry ice. So when the warmer than usual sunlight hits the ground in the spring, that dry ice does what it does best: sublimate. That's such a beautiful word, don't you think? Anyways, the sunlight passes through the translucent ice, heats the dark ground underneath, and the CO2 at the base starts turning straight from a solid into gas. Since that gas is underground, it has nowhere to go. Pressure builds and builds, and eventually, it blows. And when I say blow, I mean blows. These things can reach speeds of up to 45 meters per second, kicking up the sand and dust over 100 meters in the air. When all that stuff comes back down, we get this. Yeah, you can imagine how the guys at the ESA had a bit of a freak out when they first spotted these dark, spider-looking things on the surface. Okay, next we have the big bad dust devils. And before you say, we have those on Earth, what's the big deal? Yeah, we do. But ours are cute. Little spinning columns of dirt in a parking lot. Maybe they knock over a lawn chair. Very scary. Martian dust devils can reach up to 8 kilometers tall. That's 5 miles. For context, Earth dust devils top out at maybe 300 meters on a good day. So Mars is casually producing dust vortexes that are 25 times taller than anything we've ever seen here. Since Mars only has about 38% of Earth's surface gravity, all that dust can be lifted more easily and is able to remain suspended in the atmosphere for much longer periods. Cool fact, in 2005, a dust devil rolled right over NASA's Spirit rover, and instead of destroying it, which, fair assumption, it actually cleaned the solar panels. This one you've probably seen in movies or heard about before. And while Hollywood does exaggerate some things, I still don't feel it does these phenomena justice. Mars is the only planet we know of that produces dust storms big enough to swallow the entire planet, pole to pole. Every canyon, every crater, every rover trying to mind its own business, just gone behind a wall of dust. What's crazy about these storms is that much like the dust devils, the low gravity makes it so that these can last for months. Imagine waking up one morning and the weather forecast is just dust for the next 8 weeks. Fun times. It's something to think about if we're thinking of colonizing the planet. Anything dependent on solar is in trouble. In 2018, a global dust storm blocked so much sunlight that the Opportunity rover couldn't charge its solar panels. That rover survived 15 years on Mars. It outlived its 90-day mission by over 5,000%. And the thing that finally killed it was a damn dust storm. Opportunity's last message, roughly translated, was, "My battery is low and it's getting dark." And honestly, that one still hurts. He was a good boy and will never be forgotten. Alright, this one's simple, but it's absolutely stupid. On Mars, temperatures can range from minus 140 degrees Celsius at the poles in winter, all the way up to about 20 degrees Celsius at the equator in summer. That's pleasant, That's light jacket, maybe grab an iced coffee weather. The crazy part is that that's the overall range across the planet. In a single day, near the equator, temperatures can swing by over 80 degrees Celsius. You could be standing in relatively mild conditions at noon, and by nightfall, you're in temperatures that would make Antarctica feel tropical. On Earth, the atmosphere works like a blanket. It holds in warmth during the night, buffers the extremes, keeps things livable. Mars doesn't have that, or barely. Mars is just raw dogging space. The sun hits the surface, it warms up, the sun goes away, and all that heat just leaves immediately. We just talked about how Mars has no atmosphere, and now we're talking about clouds. What gives? Well, there are two kinds of clouds on Mars. So the first type is dust clouds. Near sunrise and sunset, the temperature shifts are dramatic enough that they can kick up low-hanging hazes of fine dust particles that just hover near the surface. And when the light hits them, it's absolute cinema. But then there's the second type, water ice clouds, which is a pretty big deal since Mars is always described as being so barren. You see, there are tiny, tiny amounts of water vapor in the atmosphere, and when temperatures drop enough at high altitudes, those molecules crystallize around specks of dust and form thin, wispy clouds. They show up most during Mars's aphelion season, when the planet is farthest from the sun. Some of them are noctilucent, which means they catch sunlight after the surface below has already gone dark. So you'd be standing in there, looking up, and there are glowing clouds above you. Pretty cool. Another wild example happens at Arsia Mons. That's one of Mars's giant shield volcanoes, about 20 kilometers high. Every spring, moist air gets forced up the western slope before sunrise, cools rapidly, and condenses into a super long cloud that stretches up to 1,800 kilometers long, roughly the length of California. Okay, last one, and it's kind of wholesome. Martian sunsets are blue. Yup, and I know that sounds backwards. Mars is literally called the red planet, but at sunrise and sunset, it flips the script. The sky around the sun turns into a cold, pale blue. Here's why. On Earth, our atmosphere scatters shorter wavelengths, also known as blue light, in every direction. When the sun sets and is at a low angle, the blue light has scattered away, and the longer wavelengths are all that's left. Ergo, we get those red/orange sunsets. Mars does the opposite. The fine dust particles in the Martian atmosphere are just the right size to scatter red light away from the sun and let the shorter blue wavelengths pass through. So when the sun is near the horizon, the area around it glows blue. After all the chaos of geysers, storms, dust devils, and temperature swings that make no sense, Mars ends each day like this, quietly with a beautiful blue view. And that's how we're going to end this video too. So that's the Mars weather report for you. Absolutely unhinged from top to bottom, and then weirdly poetic at the end. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to this brand new channel. It would mean a lot. Thanks, and see you next time.